Okay, hello and welcome. My name's Dan, and this is a tutorial on how to set up audio for recording and analysing, particularly for our industrial design students and interviews. So, first thing, this will be posted up on the Dark Device YouTube channel and on my bloggy thing. But let's get into it. We're going to be using a piece of software called Audacity first up. The reason we're using this is one, it's free, two, it's open source, and three, it's really, really good. There's a lot of audio recording softwares out there, but this has been around for decades, I reckon, and is extremely good. If you want to get Audacity from here, go down, hit download Audacity, and then select Windows or OS X or Linux if anyone's actually fearless enough to be using that. Once you've downloaded that, the install is very, very simple. I'll leave you guys to work out that. It should be fairly straightforward. Another thing you might want to look at when you're using Audacity, especially if you're on a Mac, and this is the Mac plugin, is a piece of software called Soundflower. Soundflower, just look up Soundflower, and it lets you do things like route audio that should be going to speakers into your recording software. So that's very useful for stealing the audio out of things like Zoom and Skype. It's also really good for being able to maybe record audio from something like Spotify or movies if you want to sample anything. Okay, so that's Soundflower as a plugin for the Macs, and Audacity, which will do everything on its own. You don't really need to add any plugins to this. However, if you go to the download section, you will find plugins, and those plugins will give you some other bits and pieces, like being able to do various other plugin audio files. So I don't know if you're going to need to use those, but you can basically import and export to all sorts of other software from there. Okay, let's get on with it. Now, once you've downloaded Audacity, what you'll want to do is fire it up, and it'll look like this. Now, I'm going to show you how to use this and do a really basic setup. My recording software has actually missed out the menu bar up top, so occasionally I'll switch over to my desktop view, which looks like this, and you can see I've got my file menus up the top there. Okay, so let's have a look at the main function. So the first thing we want to do is we want to select everything and make sure our microphones and inputs and outputs are selected. So you'll see over here we have on Windows, which I'm using now, we have our various methods and how to record. So you can leave that as a default, it'll automatically detect. Next, the microphone icon, we can basically take our internal sound mapper, which is the Windows software that you can route around. The microphone that I'm using, which is a little Zoom H2N unit, which is excellent. Or if I wanted to, I could record off this different headset microphone over here. You get to choose what sort of record you want, whether it's a mono or a stereo. For interviews, you may as well go mono. There's not really a huge amount of difference. And then finally, the speakers, which is where you're going to output to. Once you've selected all those things, you should be able to go through and start monitoring. Now up here, we have our two levels. We've got our input level and our output level. If I click up here, you can see that my voice is coming through. You'll also see there's a little bit of background noise when I stop talking. As a general rule, you want a little bit of background noise because we have something called a signal to noise ratio. And that is, you want your audio to be as loud as possible compared to the background noise. If I turn my audio right down, like this, then I have a tiny little bit of audio to play with. And if I boost it, I'm boosting a little bit of audio with a little bit of noise, and that turns it into a lot of noise. This is a problem. So you want to make sure your recording level is high enough that you're hitting the mid to upper kind of boundaries on your scale. In this case, we're looking at about minus 30 dB at peak. Might even turn it up a little bit further there. one of the things that you've got to keep an eye on is that you're not peaking. Now, peaking is basically when you've got it turned up too far. So if I turn up my audio recorder's input volume now, you'll see that I'm starting to get right up to this top bit. And if I actually move closer to my recorder, you can see I'm coming up. So what will happen now is I'll actually be clipping the audio signal. Now, clipping is when you record audio beyond the bounds of the maximum the microphone can go. And it gives you a really nasty sound, and essentially you lose the top of the information, the higher levels. So, long story short, try and aim for the middle somewhere. Now, I'm just going to readjust mine. If you don't have an input level on your recorder, you can do this by moving things further away and closer. I would recommend that the optimal distance between your subject and the recorder is probably about 12 inches to 24 inches, which is about 30 centimeters ish. With these things, if it goes too close, you're going to start having a problem with your percussives, like your B's and P's. So, for example, if I come too close to the microphone and I say, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, you'll see that's quite nasty. Whereas if I move away, those kind of plosive sounds disappear off, and I can say Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. You'll see in studios what they do a lot for this is they will actually have a shield which will called a pop shield, which will take away these pops, and it also stops your artist spitting on your microphone, and that can get quite stinky after a while. Anyway, I digress. One of the great things about Audacity is that there's some really quite advanced features you can access quite easily. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at how to record some audio. Basically, you have a record button up here, and you've got a pause button over here. I can start recording just by hitting record, and we're off. And it'll show you the little waveform being created as we go. Now, this is great. However, if I play this back, record, and we're off. And it'll show you the little waveform being created as we go. Okay, listening back to that, that's not so bad. I don't mind that. But if I want to get some background noise, then one of the things I'm going to have to do is actually take a sample of that before I start talking. So let's just close this audio track here. What I would tend to do when recording on a microphone or playing back into Audacity is I'll start a record and I'll do a time and a date check. I'll also do basically a line test where I might say test 1 2 test test test. Today's date is the 7th of May 2020. I'm here in my office talking to myself. By doing that, what we've done is we've got a little sample of audio. We've basically given ourselves a date. We've told us who we're talking to, and we've essentially established something. And it's given us a line check. And I can see here it's still a little bit low, but I don't mind that too much. So if I wanted to increase that, I could go over here and I could actually drive up my microphone level a little bit higher. Close that track and let's try it again. Hello, hello, testing 1 2 3 4. And you'll find when you're listening to people doing sound checks, people use words like test 1 2 3 4, 1 2 2. This is because we're getting those plosives, and we're also looking for something called sibilance. Now, sibilance is the level of s and hiss that comes out of people. You don't want to lose it, but you don't want too much of it. So this is why you'll hear sound engineers saying test 1 2 2 2, because they're looking for those plosives and that sibilance. You'll also sometimes hear them actually say things like sibilance, sibilance, and that actually lets you balance out that level of hiss in the room, because you take it away and it all sounds very robotic. Now I'm just going to stop the record there, and you'll see it's gone quite long. So let's have a quick look at how to navigate around this. So here's my basic audio track that I recorded in. You'll see I can move backwards and forwards through here. We've got some little arrows either at the end so I can jump through too. And that's great. We can select by left clicking and dragging, And there's some really basic things we can do, like selecting and hitting delete. That removes it. Control Z or Command Z undoes it. And if we click somewhere and hit spacebar,
hello, test.
It'll play. If we select only a small part and hit spacebar,
testing 1, 2, 3, 4,
it'll only play that small bit. If you want to be hugely annoying, you can use a loop feature to play that over and over again while you adjust things. We also have a stereo left-right mix that
testing 1, 2, 3, 4
lets you play either just one speaker or the other. There's also a volume boost up here. Now, one of the things you can do is have multiple tracks. So, for example, if I hit record again, it will record onto the end. But if I go File, New, oops, clearly I haven't used this enough. I can create a whole new track by disappearing that and starting a new one down here. The next thing we're going to want to look at, and I'll get rid of this track, is how to basically filter out background noise from your recordings. Now, there's a couple of reasons why you want to do this. One, it's going to make your audio cleaner and easier to listen to, which means when you throw it into a piece of software such as Otter AI, the AI software will have more of a chance to actually get in there and extract the words and not get confused by that background noise. So let's have a look at that. If I hit record, I'm going to record a first second or two of silence. Now, you will have noticed that at the start, up here, I was actually getting quite a high level of noise. Now I'm going to stop this record. I'm going to go back and have a look at that. So, you'll see if I drag this window down that this line isn't totally flat. And if I play this section back, that we have a fair chunk of recording noise. So what we're going to do is we're going to profile this recording noise by going into Effect. Oops, let me just turn to my desktop view so you can see that. Okay, so we go into Effect after selecting it, go down to Noise Reduction, and then we say Get Noise Profile. That's now gone ahead and got the noise profile for this section. The next thing we want to do is select everything we want to be quiet. Now, as an example, I will just record, just modify half of it so we can see a before and after. Once I've selected that section, I can then go Effect, down to Noise Reduction again, and go on to Part 2, where I select how much I want to reduce the noise level by. Now I'm going to be aggressive and do a 20 dB or 20 decibel noise reduction, and I can hit Preview to see what it sounds like.
Now, you will have noticed that at the start...
Okay, so that sounds good. I can't hear any background noise, so now I hit OK. And it's changed our waveforms a teeny tiny bit. And if I play it from here, you'll notice by looking up here in the playback monitor that I've quite drastically dropped the background noise level. Let's have a look. And there we go. There's the silence.
Now, you will have noticed that at the start...
So that's a really quick, dirty and easy way to basically rip out that audio. And that's given us a much better sound feed. If we wanted to do some other things, say you're in a cafe and there's lots of random noise and you can't get out of things, you can do stuff such as vocal boosting. Vocal boosting, and sorry, I'm just talking about the sound things here, so it might drop down a bit. Vocal boosting is where you select a frequency, and let's just say up to about here. We go into Effect, and you'll see down here at the bottom we have vocal reduction and isolation. If I hit this, we can basically pick an action. We can isolate the vocals, we can remove the vocals, we can change it into a whole separate channel, we can isolate basically the center of the noise in the stereo image, and we can do all sorts of stuff. But today we're going to look at isolating the vocals. With isolating, we can say how much strength or power we want to put into it. 1 is the default, so let's crank this up so we can really see it. Then you have the low cut. This is all the frequencies below the voice that we want to get rid of. Then we have the high cut. This is all the frequencies above the top of the voice that we want to get rid of. If you have someone with a particularly deep voice, you might actually want to pull the high cut down a little bit and drop the low cut as well. Again, we can hit preview.
Now, you will have noticed that at the start, up here...
Now that was quite aggressive, so let's turn that down a little bit, down to about 1.
Now, you will have noticed that at the start...
And there you see that's become a lot cleaner. Now I can just hit OK, and you'll see that it's actually changed the waveform. Now see how that's rolled, because I only half applied it to this bit. Let's give it a quick play.
Up here I was actually getting quite a high level of... Up here I was actually getting...
And you can hear it's actually changed the profile of the sound. Now you can see what your sound recording looks like. If you want to go to Analyze, you can actually plot the spectrum of the audio at the time. You can see here, this is with most of our noise removed. If I come to, let's say, this bit of speaking here, do a quick analysis, you can see we've dropped down both the top and the bottom, which we cut out. Whereas if I look over at this bit of vocals here, you'll see we still have a lot of that noise because we haven't cut it out of that section yet. So that's a pretty good tool for doing that. Once you have your sample recorded and you've edited it for noise and level, what you can then go and do is go File, Export, and then output it as an MP3, a WAV, an OGG, or whatever you want. To give you an idea of why these are important, different codecs have different what's called bit rates. The bit rate is the amount of information you're squeezing into that audio stream. MP3s are not bad, they're very small, but they do compress stuff down. Now, all compression techniques, you will lose some data. You can choose what the quality is here. 320 kilobits a second, which is 320,000 bits of information a second, is labeled insane because that's quite high. I would have said most of your stuff you'd be pretty good around the standard to medium. You will start losing top and bottom frequencies. You're not audiophiles in this situation, so don't worry too much about it and just go for the standard. There are other options such as OGG, and these are so-called, the Ogg Vorbis is basically a lossless codec. File sizes are much bigger, harder to email, longer to upload, longer to download, but you get better quality. So it's really about playing and seeing what works best for you. Once you have your file, I would highly recommend doing something fun like uploading it to Otter AI, and this is Otter. Otter basically lets you either record directly into it. I think we had a demo the other day about that. Or you can import the audio. Now you can record straight into this, and if I allow access to my microphone and start talking, you'll see that it starts putting it straight up on the screen. The issue here is that if I start doing something strange like warbling on, or you get a lot of background noise, you might start recording incorrect information and not notice, and then you'll have no backup information. If you record off something like an audio recorder or your iPhone or on your computer and then play it back in, you can do that multiple times and listen back to check that it's getting the correct information. So if I just jump over to my desktop quickly, what I can do is, while Otter is carefully noting down everything I say, I can show you how to use Audacity to play straight back in.
Now, you will have noticed that at the start, up here I was actually getting quite a high level of noise. Now,
so you see it did exactly the same thing, but if it all goes to poo somewhere, I do actually have a complete backup because I can just run the whole recording again. The other nice thing is that it doesn't require cloud access. Obviously, if you're going to use Otter AI, you're going to need an internet connection, you're going to need cloud access, and if either of those things go wrong, you're in trouble. Otter AI is very good, but if we have a quick look at one of my previous sets of conversations, let's go for this one. You'll see that it actually detects our speakers, as well as detecting the speaker. It will basically talk through who says what when, but not all of it is actually very accurate. So, for example, we can see this conversation going through.
We're only using the scale because I'm not interested in the app. I have got 3 rain gauges, but if you want to.
Now, in that case, what was happening is the guy was speaking, and it wasn't actually detecting his accent very well, which was a bit of a shame. So you can actually listen along, just like I did there, and start correcting as you go. And this is a really important feature if you're going to get accurate transcriptions. So if we look at that again.
Yeah, they sound reliable.
Oh, the actual rain gauges.
Yeah.
So that was, instead of they sound reliable, it's written they sound with all. So you're going to need to go back and check your Otter AI stuff. However, I highly recommend it. It's a lot easier than just writing it all down yourself manually, which is what people have been doing for the last couple of years. Okay, well, I hope that's given you a little bit of an intro into audio recording, and I might look at microphone technique and position along with camera technique and position in another video. Okay, thanks very much.